Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I hope everybody had a nice weekend as basketball returned last Thursday with basically every team in action on that day. It was a whirlwind of basketball, and then you had a ton of college basketball over the weekend. We're going to have more college basketball coming up this weekend. It is basketball. It's a basketball world. Everybody's just living in it right now, Sap, and plenty of stuff in the NBA to talk to. But are you getting sick of all the basketball that's on TV, or can you not get enough of it?
No, I can't get enough. I mean, there were fewer NBA games on this weekend because we saw more college basketball, and I'll dip my toe into the NCAA tournament. Every player of note is one and done, so you just start to know who these guys are, and then they're gone. So it's going to be interesting to see. You don't have Duke, you don't have Kentucky, you don't have Louisville. These are all perennial powers.
But you do have Iona.
You have
Rick
Iona
Pitino.
and Rick Pitino, who still continues to show that he's a great coach. Whether you like Rick Pitino or not, most people in Boston despise him, even though he was very successful at BU, but he can coach without question. And I mean, if BC really wanted to make a splash, go after Rick Pitino, but I don't think Rick Pitino wants to come back to Boston.
BC hired somebody from like College of Charleston or something like that.
I wasn't even paying attention.
They have no interest in making their basketball program competitive. No interest in it at all.
No, and they had a good run in the 80s and even into the 90s.
Early 2000s, Al Skinner.
Yeah.
They had a good run. They had some guy, Jared Dudley, who's still in the NBA.
Yep. He
Craig
still is,
Smith, Tyrese Rice, Sean Williams. They had a couple good guys who all made the NBA.
Before your time, Michael Adams, Dana Barros were both
Dana Barros.
NBA All-Star players. Yeah,
sure.
So I mean, they John Bagley was a guy who I like because he was kind of built like me. But yeah, they had a good run of, I'd say, 15, 20 years where they were constantly getting in the tournament. And
but it's sad. They're right in my backyard. I grew up, I don't know, a block and a half from Alumni Stadium. And the BC Athletic Department doesn't or the school maybe just doesn't care about funding their sports. It's not a priority for them at all.
No, it's not. Not at all. So, but, we'll watch March Madness and see what happens.
We'll see. Hopefully Rick Pitino and Iona lose in the first round. Yes, Sap, I don't forgive him. He's one of the most hated coaching figures in the history of Boston sports.
Oh, without question. But when he came here, he was the savior. And as soon as they didn't get the first pick and it wasn't going to land them Tim Duncan, it was like, man, when can I get the hell out of there? Yeah.
He checked out. Yeah. I remember when we signed Rick Pitino, the Celtics, my dad said they're going to win a championship with this guy because the hype was through the freaking roof because Kentucky was just ripping off titles and NBA players when Pitino was there. I mean, the amount of NBA players Pitino produced from Kentucky it was every year they're getting 3 or 4 guys in the draft. And the Celtics had all of them.
Pretty much.
Period of time. They had Eric Montross, Antoine Walker, Ron Mercer, Walter McCarty. Montross was in North Carolina. You're right.
Yeah.
Who was a big white guy from Kentucky? I'm thinking of. I'm missing somebody. There's a big white guy in Kentucky that I'm missing.
Oh, Tony Delk. Way before your time.
Tony Delk, another Kentucky guy. All ended up on the Celtics one way or another.
Yep.
But so Patino's in there. NCAA tournament is going on, but this is the Pick and Roll NBA podcast for Jet and Sap, not the Pick and Roll NCAA podcast for Jet and Sap. Though we could do a March Madness thing as it approaches a little bit closer to later in the week if you want. But since we're talking about the NBA, the most significant news coming this past weekend was an injury to Joel Embiid that at first looked like it could be Sixers season going up in flames type injury. Very fortunately, as the entire city of Philadelphia held their collective breath, it was revealed that Embiid's injury to his knee is a deep bone bruise, which doctors say should take about 2 to 3 weeks to heal. I would expect the Sixers to be extremely cautious with Embiid, not just considering the chance that they have at winning a championship this year. I think a lot of people in Philadelphia and around the league consider this the best Sixers team in a long time. But also because Embiid has a history of injury and a history of injury to his knee. So the 2 to 3 week timeline might just be sort of a loose sort of indicator. I would expect him to be out a little bit longer as they're going to be overly cautious with him, which really will affect the Eastern Conference race, Sap. When you saw Embiid went down, Obviously, everybody's waiting to see exactly what it is. But if it is this 2 to 3 week time period, do you think it really ends up shaking up the Eastern Conference race? Or do you think that Philadelphia can sort of – right now they're up a game for first place, up a game for the Nets. So I don't think anybody would be surprised if they lose standing ground to the Nets. But could you see them slipping back further than that?
No, they'll probably still be in the second slot. I mean, this pretty much guarantees that the Nets will be the 1 seed in the East. Philadelphia most likely will be number 2. Milwaukee number 3. Maybe the Bucks surpass Philadelphia. All that really means is if Philly and Milwaukee play in the second round, who's going to have home court advantage? Embiid's a nightmare matchup, especially for the Brooklyn Nets, because they don't really have anybody that can deal with Embiid. Quite frankly, who does? I mean, Embiid right now, the leading contender to win MVP in the league. Obviously, this injury is going to set him back in that vein as well. But this is going to really put on hold what Philadelphia can do. We have to see Ben Simmons score more, something he naturally doesn't do. Does everything else at a very high level, rebound, pass, defend. Scoring's not his thing. Maybe he's going to have to elevate a little bit more, force the action a little bit more.
Oh, he's going – basket. No choice but to.
No. You're missing 30 points a game from Embiid. Where do you pick that up? This is going to hurt the 76ers. I often think of these injuries, if they happen at a certain time and he comes back in 3 weeks and he's 100%, that it can be a blessing in disguise because it gives him 3 weeks off to rest, relax, recuperate, so that when you get to the postseason, he'll have more in the tank, right? Like the Lakers can look at this and say Anthony Davis is going to end up missing 6 to 8 weeks with his Achilles injury. Right. Maybe if he comes back the final month, he'll be better for it. You can weigh it that way, but I could get concerned with Embiid because he has had a tendency of getting out of shape throughout his career. So 3
that's
weeks
a fair point. Very fair
off
point.
His legs. What exactly is Embiid eating? Is he still training? When he comes back in 3 weeks, is he going to be 15 pounds heavier?
And it's hard to train if your knee is bothering you. You know, it's hard to do the cardio stuff. I mean, I'm sure the doctors are saying, stay off the knee. So that's not practicing. That's not being able to do much cardio. And like you said, he has not been in the greatest shape in his career at times. And he's shown that late in the season, sometimes he fades, especially in the second half of games because he gets gassed. So I think that's a really good point, Sap, of saying, well, what kind of shape is he going to be when he gets back? And maybe they have to work him back in slowly. I think the difference here between the Anthony Davis injury and this Embiid one is, I said this a few weeks ago when we were talking about AD. For the Lakers, I don't think seeding matters to them at all. Mm-hmm. I said at the time, keep Anthony Davis out until like the last 2 weeks of the season and then play him. Because honestly, I think the Lakers could be any seed in the West and be able to come out of it because they have LeBron and they have and hopefully presumably an healthy AD and championship experience. The Sixers, I think it's the complete opposite. I think seeding matters to them a whole lot. If you look at them last year, before the lockdown and before the bubble, the Sixers were a terrible road team, one of the worst road teams in the NBA, and one of the best teams at home. Now this year they've been much better on the road. There's been no fans, and they've been obviously really, really great at home too. In fact, I have the numbers right in front of me. At home, they're 17-3. Away, they're fine, 10-9. Not great, but that's that's standard. Above 500 is good when you're talking about your road record. But if you're talking about an Eastern Conference Finals and you're the Sixers and you're playing the Nets, and presumably at that point in time, they'll have a good amount of fans in the arena, maybe not full, but fans should play an impact. You want to be home. You want to have that home court advantage. You're the 76ers. So in terms of impact, I don't see them, you're right, slipping below the 3 seed because, let's see, the Bucks are 2.5 games behind them. The Nets are 1 game behind them. They could cough up enough games where they fall to the 3 seed with Embiid out. But the biggest thing for me is that home court advantage against the Nets. Or even against the Bucks. If, say, the Nets get bumped off, which I don't think either of us expect, and they have to play the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, Philly wants to be home. They want to have that home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And they'd like to have the home court advantage in the finals if they get there too. And they're right in the same right now. Philadelphia is 27-12, which is a .692 winning percentage. The Lakers are 25-13, which is a .658 winning percentage. So Philadelphia at the season end today would have home court advantage over the Lakers. Now, with Embiid out 2 to 3 weeks, that could change. And the more home court, the better for Philly. I know that they're not the same team as they were last year, but they don't have championship experience. I mean, Doc Rivers has won a championship, but the players don't have championship experience. And I think that home court matters a lot to them. So I look at that as the biggest impact of this injury, is that it could wipe away their home court advantage.
Yeah, without question. And again, what type of shape is Joel Embiid going to be in when he comes back in 3 weeks? I just think that the 76ers rely so heavily on Embiid, and that's why he's the leading contender for MVP. I think you can make a case he's meant more to his team than any other player in the league. He's their primary scorer, rebounder. He's really improved defensively. He's dominated other big men. I mean, he absolutely destroyed Rudy Gobert when Utah went to Philadelphia, put up 40 points against Gobert. So I think Embiid is that guy that, right now is the front runner for MVP, got that Philadelphia 76er team right in contention, and could be the X factor if they play Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference Finals, because, DeAndre Jordan is not in any condition or shape or at the level of play or at his time in his career that he can deal with Joel Embiid. I don't think anybody can really deal with Joel Embiid. Maybe the only way to deal with him is you got to punish him on the defensive end. So if you can have a scorer, a big guy that's a scorer that makes him play noticeably on defense, then you can maybe tire him out. But this is
you can't take him away. He's too good right now.
He's too good. He's a great player, and 3 weeks means he's going to miss roughly 9 games or thereabouts.
Well, like
which
you said,
is a big loss.
He dominated Rudy Gobert, who everybody considers to be the best defensive big,
right.
Certainly in the NBA. A lot of people consider him the best defensive player in the league. And if Rudy Gobert can't even slow him down a little bit, what chance does Bam Adebayo is a fine player. He's not Rudy Gobert defensively. What chances like a Bam Adebayo have, or whoever the hell the Celtics will throw out there? Or even, the Nets have no center to speak of. DeAndre Jordan would get eaten alive. So that's the real issue for Philadelphia not having Embiid, is that he's their offense. And without him, like you said, Ben Simmons is going to be asked to do things that he's not necessarily comfortable doing. Tobias Harris has to handle a bigger load offensively, and they're just not nearly as dangerous of a team. Now, it seems like everybody expects Embiid will be fine come postseason, barring as you mentioned, the in shape part of it. But for right now, I don't think they're striking fear in anybody without Embiid. And so if he does miss, say, 9 games, the schedule is not particularly easy for them, Sap. In that stretch, they have, I'll just read it off for you, the Knicks, the Bucks, the Kings, the Knicks again. Then it gets pretty tough on their West Coast road trip of Golden State, both the LA teams, and Denver. So that's a really tough road trip to go on without Embiid, presumably. And then it eases up a little bit after there. But Bucks, Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, that's 4 really tough games they're going to have to play without Embiid on that schedule.
Yeah, I mean, if they can go 500 during that stretch, that's probably a pretty decent accomplishment, but that would certainly drop them below Brooklyn. It may even drop them below Milwaukee. Now you're looking at the 3 seed, which presumably means you're playing a better team in the first round, and then in the second round, if you're playing Milwaukee, you don't have home court advantage. So it's a big loss for Philadelphia. This guy's been the MVP of the league so far, just slightly over the likes of Dame Lillard, James Harden, and LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic. I think those have been the 5 guys. But I think he's kind of just a little bit above those guys. And I think his chance of winning MVP is going to be severely impacted by this, because at that point, he's already missed 9 games this year. Let's say he misses another 9 games. He will have only played a potential 54 of 72 games.
Yeah.
54 games doesn't get you the MVP, even in a 72-game schedule. The last time a player won an MVP missing 15 or more games was Bill Walton in 1978. And that's back when the players voted. Yeah, pretty recent. I mean, Bill Walton's the old man now. He was the young guy then. It's only 43 years ago. But back then, the players voted for MVP. The next year or 2 years later, it started with the media voting for the MVP. So this is going to be something that hurts Embiid's chances of winning MVP, I think, as well.
Yeah, well, though, if the Sixers play really bad when he's out, I actually think it could potentially elevate his chances of MVP, because you see how valuable he is. But, I mean, you'd be crazy to say that a guy who misses 18 games in a shortened season, it doesn't impact his chances of winning the award. I mean, it certainly, this helps LeBron's case, though. I think that he, in my mind, lost the award when the team has not played particularly well with Anthony Davis. And you look at how well a guy like Damian Lillard's played without basically anybody on his team. Or a guy like Jokic. I mean, I know the Nuggets haven't dealt with as many injuries, but they're starting to play really, really good basketball, and his stats are just unbelievable. Even Doncic is starting to really, and the Mavs starting to turn it on, and so he might make some noise for MVP before the season's all said and done. I don't know if he'll win it, but he might really put himself in contention as the Mavs continue to play good basketball. So it does throw the MVP race into flux, which, I mean, as it should be. We've been talking about this all season long, Sap. It's been a really fascinating race for the award, where at first LeBron was really fast out of the gate and looked like he was going to lap the field. Then Embiid sort of caught up with them, and now we've had guys like Lillard come on after the trade. James Harden certainly has come on really, really strong. Jokic continues to put up one of the most unique statistical seasons ever for a center. So it's really, the race isn't going to be over till it's over, to use a cliche, or until the fat lady sings. And that fat lady might be Joel Embiid by the end of the year, depending on what kind of shape he's going to be in.
He might be a 310-pound fat man.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really fascinating how the MVP race plays out. And Joel Embiid, because I'm sure he wants the MVP, maybe he'll want to come back a little bit sooner than the team might want him back. So we'll see. Have to see how that plays itself out.
Yeah, that's one of those injuries, though, you got to just let it heal. It's a bone bruise, and it's got to heal itself as close to 100% as it can. It's not something you want to play through, because if you hit it again and you fall and then make it even worse, and now you're talking about being out maybe for the rest of the regular season. So, winning an MVP is important for a player. I get all that, but more importantly is trying to be right for the playoffs.
For a lot of players, too, I don't know what his contract's like, but there's some big-time incentives tied into winning an MVP award. So that might be, if I can look into that, I'll see if Embiid has an MVP clause, which usually gives you a nice couple $1 million bonus in your contract.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll be like Cam Newton has all these incentives in his new contract with the Patriots to be league MVP or to be Super Bowl MVP.
I don't think he's going to win the league MVP.
He's going to accomplish that.
He could win Super Bowl MVP. You don't know, Sap. Yeah. He could as a running back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as a running back, maybe he'll return a punt for a touchdown.
By the way, the Sixers have 3 games remaining against the Bucks this season. All of those will be massive, and just 1 game remaining against the Nets, which is on April 14th. That will be a big-time game as well. So those 3 teams have distanced themselves, I think, enough in the East that it's going to be one of the 3 of them that comes out with the 1 seed. Certainly looks like Brooklyn right now, but as I told you earlier in the year, Sap, Milwaukee is quietly under the radar doing pretty much what they've done the past couple of years. They might not, put up the exact number of wins. Again, it's a shortened season, but they're playing just as good a basketball, and no one's talking about them, which I think is much better for them.
Yeah, the key is Drew Holiday. When he doesn't play, they're a 500 team. When he plays, they're a 700 team. So obviously, it's important that Drew Holiday is
defensively
healthy.
When he plays. They're really tough defensively when he plays.
They are, because Giannis plays outstanding defense. Holiday
then you have
plays outstanding defense.
2 guys who are perennial first team all defensive guys. I mean, they'll hound you. And then Lopez can block some shots down low. Middleton's an underrated defender. I mean, they're a good defensive team. They're certainly better than the Nets or the Sixers defensively. It's just offensively.
Oh, without question. Yeah, and again, because Giannis can only do so much when he gets to the postseason. I compare him to Lamar Jackson, great regular season player. Get to the postseason, that uniqueness that he has kind of works against him in the postseason. Athletic? Out of those 2? Oh, man. Well, one guy is almost 7 feet tall. I mean, Giannis is 6'10" and a half and has like the same athleticism nearly as Russell Westbrook. Lamar's like a world-class sprinter, and they're both fabulous players, and I love them both because they play their asses off, but they're just not as skilled as other players in the league. Giannis is an athlete first and a skilled basketball player second. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. They both can get better and get to a next level, but that's really tough. That's like becoming a golfer who, shoots in the high 70s and you're trying to be a par golfer. That's a tough stretch, tough thing to make up.
Here's the last question comparing the 2 then. Is it more likely that Lamar Jackson learns how to throw more accurately or that Giannis learns how to shoot more accurately? What's an easier thing to learn how to do?
That's a really good question.
Do I smell a column coming up, Sap?
It could be, yeah. Lamar Jackson and Giannis. Let's compare them. Cross sports, comparisons. I love that stuff. I think.
How great is this podcast for you? It's just your column ideas.
Great.
It's just like it's a source of great ideas. You're welcome.
I love it. I'm gonna give you a byline on my columns.
I deserve
John
one.
Sapichetti with Jet Stryer. Absolutely.
Or has there ever been a column produced by? I'm producing the column. You're writing
producing the
it.
columns. Yes, we're bringing radio and podcasting to writing, which is a good thing because oftentimes you bring writing into podcasting. Very innovative on our part, without question. I think that Lamar can become a better passer. Probably easier than Giannis could become an accomplished shooter. I can't see Giannis all of a sudden becoming a 38% 3-point shooter and a 78% free throw shooter. I don't think he can get there.
What if it was the All-Star game every time? Then he'd become a 100% 3-point shooter.
Yeah, exactly. Bank them in and
he should try to bank. That's what he should just do.
Just fire it up there. Do what Tim Duncan used to do. The bank was always open for Tim, but that was intentional, not.
He'd be proud. Accident. He'd be proud of Giannis's 3-point barrage at the All-Star game. So, like I said, the Bucks, the Nets, and the Sixers. One of those three teams is going to be the 1 seed in the East. But as we saw last year, granted it wasn't a bubble, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make it to the finals, as it was the 5th seeded Miami Heat. 5th seeded, Sep, or 4th? 5th seeded Miami Heat.
5th seed, yeah.
Who came out of the pack and made the NBA Finals. Is there a spoiler team this year, not just in the East, Sep, in the West? Is there a spoiler team? The favorites are clear. Brooklyn, LA, Philly, probably the other LA team too. So take those teams out of the equation.
And I'm even going to take
Clippers,
teams like
Clippers, Lakers, Sixers, Nets. Take them out.
Yeah, and I'm even going to take Milwaukee out. I'm going to take Phoenix out because I kind of talked about that last week that Phoenix is a surprise team. It could do something. Even teams like Denver. I went a little bit lower in the standings to come up
really
with
low.
a couple of.
Got to be somewhat realistic, Sep.
No, but Miami was the 5th seed, and no one thought they were going to get to the finals. They swept Indiana in the first round, and then they beat Milwaukee, which had the best record in basketball, in 5 games. Milwaukee was a good matchup for Miami. Miami had won the season series against Milwaukee, and Milwaukee was not the same team in the bubble as they were during the rest of the season. They just didn't adapt to the bubble at all. They didn't play well in the reentry of the bubble or even in their first round series. They struggled, and then they lost to Miami. And then Miami beat the Celtics, who came up short in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm going to go to the Eastern Conference. And again, the East, as we've said, is Brooklyn, Philly, Milwaukee, and then everybody else. I mean, Miami's starting to play a lot better. The Celtics have shown a little bit, although the game they played against a real contender, they got blown out in the fourth quarter against the Brooklyn Nets. So how seriously can we take them? But I'm going to throw a team out there that right now is, right now in the 9 spot in the Eastern Conference. It's the Indiana Pacers. Now they're 17-20, a losing record.
Not good.
When I look at their roster, you got Malcolm Brogdon, who's outstanding. You got Sabonis, who's an all-star. You've also got Miles Turner, who should be a Celtic, but isn't. And he's a guy who's among the league leaders in block shots, gives you 14.7 rebounds per game. They just activated Karis LeVert, who they acquired in the trade, early in the season, the trade that involved, Houston, Brooklyn, Indiana. It seemed like every team in the league was involved in that. So I really like that roster, and they play good defense. They're well coached. If they had TJ Warren coming back, I think even more highly of them. He's in a situation where they're not sure if he's going to be back for the playoffs. That's, again, just a long shot special. If they get the right matchup, if they can jump to the 5 seed and play the Celtics in the first round and beat them, next thing you know, they're into the second round. So Indiana in the East could be a long shot special. In the West, it's Dallas. And, of course, I think they have more high-end talent than Indiana. You've got Luka Doncic, one of the, 7 or 8 best players in the league. We'd agree on that. You got Porzingis is back now playing at a very high level. And I think that Mark Cuban, the owner, sometimes if he sees that there's a chance, they'll jump in and maybe make a move at the trade deadline.
I think either the deadline or the offseason, they're going to bring in a big name player. Yeah,
and I think I've talked to several people who always have it in their mind that Luka and Giannis are going to play together at some point in their career. They're both young enough that could happen, and maybe even Nikola Jokic. I mean, the three of them are really good friends. So how would that be as a threesome? I mean, when you really think about that would be kind of
that team, the European Union.
My Lord, that would be a talented team to say the least. So I would say Dallas in the West. Now the West is deeper than the East. We talked about Phoenix. I think they've kind of elevated to borderline contender. Portland's done a really good job considering all the injuries. Denver's playing a lot better. Obviously, we know the Lakers and the Clippers are perceived to be the two best teams in the West. I still don't buy Utah. I just don't. They just remind me of the Hawks of 6 years ago that had the best record in the East, got to the conference finals, and got swept by LeBron and the Cavaliers. I don't think Utah will get to the conference finals. I think they're primed to get knocked out in the second round. So those are the two teams, though. I know Indiana's a real long shot because I'm talking about a team with a losing record.
Yeah, they're not even in the playoffs right now.
No, are they the 10 seed?
They're the 9
right
seed.
Now? 9
they are
seed.
a game and a half behind the Hawks.
Okay, but they would play the 8-9.
Oh, sorry, 2 games behind the Hawks.
But they could play the 8-9 game.
That's right. I don't consider that in the playoffs. I'm the traditionalist who's the top 8, but yes, they would be in the play-in spot right now.
Well, if you're a real traditionalist, just use the top 6 then, because 7 plays 10 and 8 plays 9, right? In those play-in scenarios. So really, you're not in the playoffs unless you're one of the top 6 teams. But I like that roster, and especially with Karis LeVert coming back. I know he's one of your favorite players too. He's a typical Jet Stryer player, right? Just a tough, hard-nosed guy who plays defense and is not.
I'm happy for him because
anybody.
It's a scary situation where they found he had a mass in his liver or kidney, and that he was
his kidney,
completely unaware of it, and that if he hadn't been traded, who the hell knows what would have happened? He said the trade saved his life. He very well may be right. I don't know if that's a failure on behalf of the Nets doctors, or it's just something that you only look for once a player switches hands.
Yeah, maybe Kyrie is the team doctor there in Brooklyn. He doesn't believe in science.
Medicine, some sort of witch doctor. He's using herbs to heal people.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever it's doing, unfortunately, it's working. In Brooklyn. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying with the Pacers. I like their roster a lot. Somebody you didn't even mention, T.J. McConnell, who's playing really well for them. In fact, I think he had, 11 steals like a week or so ago?
He did. He had double-digit steals.
Yeah.
Dougie really McDermott had a big game the other night.
Their roster's good. The problem I run into it is that they don't have they're a bunch of B and C players. They don't really have any D players, but they don't have an A player.
They don't have an A.
As much as people might like Sabonis, he's not. He's a B player. He's a very good player.
He's a guy who's going to make the All-Star team almost every year because he's just good enough to sneak in, kind of like Al Horford did. He'd be the 12th guy on the All-Star team.
I consider an A player like somebody say, go win us this game.
Right.
I don't think he can do that.
No, but that's what they really lack. I mean, again, even if they had been able to sign Gordon Hayward, I don't even consider him that guy. There's only so many of those guys. The Pacers don't have it, but just kind of a long shot special.
Yeah.
And by the way,
the roster is good. You're not wrong. The roster is it's talented.
And by the way, don't count out Miami again because since Butler's come back, they're playing defense better than any team in the league. And there's a guy who we never mentioned for MVP is Jimmy Butler because his numbers aren't otherworldly, but he means a lot to every team he's ever played on.
Missed too many games this season, but yeah, you're right.
Right. But again,
he's going to end up making an All-NBA team, I think, because he'll have played his way into it.
They're 4-10 without him. They're obviously much better with him. So yeah, that's a team.
They're also
don't
big game hunting for a trade. They're looking to acquire a big piece as well.
Yep.
You saw in the finals what happened is that they just don't have enough offensive firepower to stay with teams.
No.
With a team like the Lakers, they're defensively one of the best teams in the league. But offensive, Butler too, because he's not a great shooter. He's a streaky shooter, so he's going to have off nights. And when he has off nights, you can't ask Bam Adebayo to fill it up. It was kind of an anomaly with how well Hero and Duncan Robinson were shooting last year in the bubble. Was just like it's not sustainable. The Heat certainly they'll be dangerous, and I don't think anybody is going to want to play them. Certainly not Milwaukee again because I think they just have the Bucks number. That's the one thing the Bucks don't want to. Bucks don't want to get into a defensive grind because they're so offensively hampered by Giannis not being able to be a good shooter. Mm-hmm. That's what the Heat. I mean, they just took him away. They made him shoot, and that's why they lost that series. So no one wants to play the Heat. Teams would much rather play the Celtics. Teams would probably rather play the Pacers than the Celtics, or the Celtics and the Pacers too. Honestly,
yeah.
I don't think the Celtics are striking the fear of God into anybody.
Butler's an animal out there, and he's a dog, and he's gonna, he'll do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, and Adebayo is one of the best rim protectors.
Absolutely, and again, we both agree that they're very well coached by Eric Spoelstra. He's one of the best coaches in the sport.
You're right.
So
Butler's he's a psycho. I love it. So it's great. And so in the West, I get what you're saying about Dallas because Luka's so good. I don't believe in them because I don't believe in the rest of the roster. I don't believe in
No.
Porzingis. I don't believe in Josh Richardson. I just don't think
Mhm.
the rest of the roster is that good. And I think it's going to get there because Mark Cuban isn't going to waste prime years of Luka Doncic.
No.
And he's willing to pay top dollar, and they're a destination too. I mean, people want to
Mhm.
play in Dallas. It's a big market, and there's tax benefits to playing in Texas.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I could see a big name going there in free agency, or somebody who's a little disgruntled and then making the move. I think Porzingis is a nice trade chip to be able to deal. They have a lot of their picks, so I could see Luka Doncic getting paired with another star that maybe fits his game a little bit better in the near future. Or maybe they vision Porzingis as more of a three, the third
Mhm.
option on a really good team. So I don't think that they're going to be a team I don't believe in for long, but for this season, I'm not buying it. If I had to pick a long shot special in each conference, Sap, I'd say the Blazers. Maybe I'm being biased because I lived in Oregon for 4 years and really like the Blazers, but Dame Lillard is playing as well as anybody is in basketball right now.
Mhm.
You know he can single-handedly beat you on a given night. That's an A player. Where Dame Lillard, they can say we're overmatched, we're outgunned, we need a win. Dame, find a way, and he'll be able to do it. Kind of like how Barkley did in the finals against Jordan when there was a game where he just went bananas against Jordan. I think he was
Mhm.
taking a lot of stands. He's like, I just wasn't going to let our team lose this game.
Mhm.
So Lillard can do that. They're getting a lot of pieces back, obviously. McCollum, Nurkic, maybe Zach Collins. I could see them also making a move at the deadline to improving their roster. I just think that is a nightmare backcourt to have to deal with for teams. They've been missing one other piece for it seems like all of Lillard's career. But if I had to pick a long shot special, could certainly see them knocking off the Jazz. The Clippers haven't
Oh,
played particularly
absolutely.
well recently, so I could see them knocking off the Clippers. I have a
Mhm.
hard time seeing them beat the Lakers. The Lakers sort of manhandled them last year after the
They
first game.
they don't have anybody to match up against LeBron or Anthony Davis, and
That's
that's
why they
not a
need to
good
be
spot
fully
to be in.
healthy in order to
Yeah.
take on the Lakers. But I mean,
And
I could see them taking any other team in that. I could see them
yeah,
beating them.
and Carmelo's playing out of his mind. He's averaging
He's
20
playing
points a
terrific.
game the last 6 games, shooting like 50, 40, 90. He's had for the first time or only the second year in his career, he's in shape. Like I'm sure Carmelo at times probably says, damn, I should have spent more time getting in shape, staying in shape over my career. I would have been that much better, but here he is at 37 because he's a year older than LeBron. He's still out there balling. And again, he's a nice piece to have. If McCollum comes back and Nurkic, I think that team definitely is right there with, say, Phoenix and Denver as the next group just below the Lakers. And again, Utah, I would put in with them as well because I just don't buy them. And the Clippers, it just seems like in close games, they can't close.
Yeah, something's wrong with them right now.
Something's wrong
weird
with them. It really is. I mean, Paul George is the least clutch player in the NBA, and Kawhi's numbers in close games aren't that great. I mean, we remember the NBA Finals. He didn't play that great in the NBA Finals. If you really look back, he was great in the second round against Philly and in the conference finals against Milwaukee. He wasn't that great in the NBA Finals. Toronto, and I don't want to take anything away from them, they won that finals because Golden State just got crippled with injuries. I mean, Durant got hurt, Klay Thompson got hurt, Steph was playing
Toronto
banged
played
up.
very aggressive.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe Kyle Lowry injured everybody, one of your other favorite players. But
I do
it
love
was
Kyle
more
Lowry.
it was more about Toronto just outlasting Golden State.
How not surprising is it that the Heat have been kicking the tires on trying to bring in Kyle Lowry?
Oh man, that would be a great addition.
Oh my God,
my Lord, him and
Dude,
Jimmy
love it
Butler.
there.
Oh, him and Jimmy Butler would be.
If they didn't kill each
team
other,
could scare some people. If they didn't kill each other, that team could scare the hell out of everybody.
Yeah, because those are some dogs, as our friend Kendrick Perkins likes to say. So in the East, Sap, call me crazy, and I don't think it's going to happen. But if the Wizards could sneak into that 7 seed, if the Wizards could play the Sixers in the first round, I think they could scare the Sixers. I don't think they could win the East. I'm not going that far long shot special. There's no way. But I think they could. I love Russell Westbrook, and Bradley Beal has been the best scorer in the NBA this year. I think I've seen strides in Hachimura. I like the rookie they have from Israel, Denis Avia. I don't think the roster is that bad. I mean, they're not good. They were obviously the worst team in the league to start the year, and they're just 14-23, which puts them, well behind. But if they could go on a streak and figure out a way to get like the 7th seed, I could see them giving Milwaukee or Philadelphia a run at it.
Well, you look
You're
at that
saying
roster,
long
right?
shot special, right? I mean,
That's a long shot special. The track pays out, 30-1 shots as easily as they pay out 2-1 shots. The thing is, with that team, Bradley Beal could win a game all by himself, and Russell Westbrook could win a game all by himself. So now you've got 2 games in a series. And at that point, you get some sort of puncher's chance because those two guys are that good. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like...
Right, the roster's not that bad.
No, I think they need to obviously add some pieces, and Scott Brooks seems to last longer than he should at these different coaching outposts. But Beal can win a game, and Westbrook can win a game. And next thing you know, if you're a 2-2 going into Game 5, and that team that's supposed to beat you handily gets a little tense, and then all of a sudden the shots aren't dropping.
Right, like Robin Lopez is a good player. Davis Bertans signed for like $1 billion this offseason.
He can shoot.
That's why I look at the roster and like they should be better than they are, and especially the start to the season was just I think they started like 2-14, just horrific.
Right.
But if I'm looking at the roster and I'm looking like you said at 2 guys who, in terms of just pure talent, could have one of the best backcourts in the NBA, they could scare a team, but they have to get in.
Oh, without question. They have to get in. That's
a lot of ground to make up.
They do. But, there's still half a season left to play. And they've been about a 500 team since the first month.
So that's my really long shot special. And, in a way, they're similar to the Blazers in that they're so backcourt reliant. It's just that even though Bradley Beal's numbers are better than Dame Lillard is, of those guys, is the best player.
Oh, without question. Without question, he's better. He's only averaging, 3 fewer points per game, but he's so much more efficient than Bradley Beal, and he does more than Bradley Beal on the court. Yeah,
do you think is Dame Lillard the most clutch player in the NBA?
He's up there. He certainly is. I mean, he's
I want him taking the last shot if I had my pick of anybody right now.
He is. I'd want the ball in LeBron's hands, and then probably Dame Lillard taking the shot.
But say
Kyrie
it's somebody
Irving
who has to just shoot it.
Yeah, he'd be right there. Absolutely. Steph hasn't been as great a clutch shooter as you think. He has a tendency of hitting a barrage of threes that takes like a 2-point game and turns it into 11.
He's also kind of a passive player, right? Like in terms of his attitude, like he's so gifted. And Dame Lillard, he grew up in Oakland. He's been scrapping for everything. He's got, Steph Curry grew up with the rich dad, as you like to say.
Rich kid, yeah.
And, Dame Lillard has scrapped for everything he's got. And I think he's got that, that cold-blooded ice water, I'm going to kill you in his veins. And Curry, Curry's ultimately will go down in his career as a better player than Dame Lillard. He's got 2 MVPs. Dame has none. But if I'm taking just the last shot, I want the guy who's just locked to Curry's I won 2 MVPs, a couple titles. I'm sure my kids will be the next great shooter in the NBA.
Right.
I don't have anything to worry about. Dame Lillard's if I don't hit this shot, I will die right here and now on the court.
Yeah, he's got a little Russell Westbrook in him, with that real edge that he plays with. I also wouldn't mind the ball in Kyrie Irving's hands.
It's an Oakland thing. It's an Oakland point guard thing.
Probably it is, yeah. Gary Payton was from Oakland.
Jason Kidd.
Yeah. But don't forget Kyrie Irving. He'd be up there, too, to have the ball in his hands at the end of the game.
I don't want to mention him.
But I noticed that because I mentioned him 3 times and you started talking about Oakland.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was like, Jet, we're still talking about the NBA.
A trigger word for me. Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
But it's, you can't this case hit the biggest shot in the NBA in the past decade, Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I know, LeBron would not have any titles without Kyrie Irving and Ray Allen, apparently, according to Skip Bayless, because they bailed him all out, although LeBron got them to the precipice of all those games and all those series. But, Kyrie, we saw what he did to the Celtics last week. It looked like a man playing against boys.
When you're that good of a dribbler, as he's the God, it pains me to say this, he's the best dribbler I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah,
and you can create your shot wherever you want on the court. You could be pinned in with 3 guys guarding you in the corner. He's a good enough dribbler to somehow figure out a way out of that. He's magic with the ball, not the player. But I just don't like giving him credit for anything, Sap. So that's why I kept interrupting you when you were saying it. Yeah, I guess.
All right. Okay.
Do you give Skip Bayless credit for anything?
Yes, signing a 4-year, $32 million contract. God bless him and good luck to him. And you know what? I'd do that myself. He's good at what he does.
Did he sign with the Patriots today too? Is that?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, he was the only person who signed a contract today in the entire country that didn't sign with the Patriots. But yeah, Skip's got 4 years, $32 million, and good for him. He knows what he does. He knows what he's doing, and he pushes the envelope. I'm starting to use every cliche out there. It sounds like I just ate a lot of Chinese food and I'm reading fortune cookies. But he's good at what he does. So pay the man.
Pay the man, and I'm sure he's not too disappointed getting that massive contract either. Thanks for listening to the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. You can find us wherever podcasts are. You've probably already found us if you're listening to this, but just a reminder, we are on Spreaker, we are on Twitter, we are on SoundCloud, we are on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you can listen, we are found. Again, this is the Pick and Roll podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks for listening.